Okay, so I'm going to go over some things we discovered in our spring 2025, basically Revit class. We're doing these renderings of a large office space, so we're using a lot of drop ceilings, like 2x4s and 2x2s. And so it's showing up nicely here in Revit when we use the kind of default ceiling options to make our ceilings. However, when we go over to Enscape, what's happening is they're completely disappearing. So our other textures are coming through. Like you can see my floor, you can see the plastic on my chairs, you can see my mural, brass, things like that. Like it's not complete, but you can see how, materials are rendering the way I want them to. But there's no ceiling grid, which again throws this off if we're showing, a contemporary office. So one of the things I discovered was you actually have to make a new material and paint it on the ceiling. So let me pause and I'll bring up an example where it did work. Okay, so here's the office now with a new, basically painted texture on the ceiling. So my grid is still there in my reflected ceiling plan, but this is now a new 2x4 texture that I've painted on the ceiling, and it works really nicely. Um, Frankly, I don't know if I got lucky, but it actually does line up to my grids. I think one of the secrets for that is that I used the original Revit material as kind of my base material, and then I edited it with this new picture. So I'm going to walk through kind of how that works. I just want to show you what it looks like in Revit. So Revit is kind of sort of showing the texture there, but again, on my reflected ceiling plan, let me bring that up. You can still see that the grids and the light fixtures are all still there in kind of line format. So we're sort of looking at this side of the office over here. So it doesn't change the texture that's happening or the pattern that's happening on your reflected ceiling plan, which is good. What it did do is basically paint it as if I were painting a wall. So I made a new texture and painted the ceiling. So I'm going to do a couple samples like that, but also show folks how I made this new texture. Also for my students going forward, this is being recorded in the spring semester of 2025. I have a Google Drives folder with more ceiling tile patterns. So for folks who want to do black ones or 2x4s, I found some pretty good images online. Also the architecture downloads that we've been using also have some really nice wood paneling options. So again, like depending on how upgraded you're going to have your ceiling panel systems. All right, so let me just pull up some examples and I'll kind of walk us through how I created this too. Set up some smaller dummy rooms because the model I was working on is huge and it's taking forever to demo stuff. So just to review, what I'm going to do is I have my ceiling plan here, and now I have two rooms, one with a 2x4 and one with 2x2. So we'll kind of demo how this all works. Here's what the 2x4 room looks like. This is the Revit texture. And again, we would hope that it works, but it doesn't. So let me kind of show what that looks like again right here. Let's get rid of this guy for a minute. So if you go to your second box in, say realistic, we'll see this lovely ceiling texture. But then when we go over to Enscape, it's blank. Okay, so what we're going to do now is go back into Revit and make ourselves a new material that matches up with this grid. So what we do is we go to modify. I'm sorry, no, we go to manage, and then we pick, we're going to watch the blue ball spin, materials. And now we're going to make ourselves a new texture, but we're going to base it on the Revit one because it actually functions mathematically really well. So the grid lines up basically. So we're going to type in ACT, bring up basically what's the old texture that this is what Revit's running here. Again, for some reason, Enscape does not like that texture, won't read it. So let's see. If there are materials in this document, it's just taking a second. Taking this 2x4 one, right clicking, say duplicate material and assets. Then we're going to rename it. And I'm recording this on a weekend, so my brain is mush. All right, it's capitals, ACT. My computer's really slow today too. So ACT, new, and then acoustic. Uh, there we go. Okay, so before we get moving on this, you want to hit this right button so we don't override the material that's not working, whatever. So now what we're going to do is click on the name of the file to now pull in a new image file that we want to use. So I've saved a couple on my desktop. Like I said, I've also made it available for my students too. So in my case, it's here for this year's class folder. I have ceiling textures. I have a couple here that you can look at. This one is kind of the more kind of school looking K through 12 one. It's real bumpy. It has a lot of holes. This one's a little bit smoother. I like this one. So we're going to use this one today. Say open. And, picture doesn't change drastically, but we're going to say, okay. And then now what we have to do is paint that surface onto our ceiling. So that's when we go back to our modify button and then the paintbrush right up here, the little circle with the paint. And this is my new one right here. So I'm going to say done. And then I'm going to paint it up on there. Oops, hold on. We got to start that up again. I was talking. So we're going to click paint there. Doesn't really change in the picture here, but what we should see is when we go over to Enscape, it should reload. So I'm going to close it down, open up Enscape again. That's sometimes a trick we have to do in class is basically start up Enscape again if our materials aren't rendering. Here it is in Enscape rendering really nicely. One of the things that pleasantly surprised me is that the image aligns with my grid. So like it's lining up where my lights are and things like that. I don't know if I got lucky or not. We're going to test this out on the 2x2 grid and see how that's working. I think it's because I'm using the Revit's kind of image file as my base file. So I'm hoping that there's some extra stuff going on behind the scenes to make sure this math works out. So the next example I'm going to do is with my 2x2 room. So I'll kind of go through those steps again. So here we are back in Enscape. Let me bring up project browser again because I closed that bugger. Oh wait, no, I have it here. So here's my 2x2 room. We'll look at this again in realistic texture. Again, if I bring it over in Enscape, it's going to be blank. So what we want to do now is make a new 2x2 grid image file. So we're going to go again to manage and then materials. And again, bring up the ACT file, swap that out. So here's the 2x2 one, 2x4 here it says. So I'm going to now right click, duplicate using material and assets, rename that one. So again, we're going to rename it, in this case, again, ACT new acoustic. Oops, hold on. Oh, there, acoustic. Okay. And again, click the white box here. So we're not overriding that image. I'm going to click on this one that says Pebble White. And then I also have a 2x2 grid picture on the other end. So you can pause here if you're all set, but we'll kind of walk through one more one after this where I'm going to show how to do black grids because again, we've had some students wanting to kind of pick some different colors, but we'll check out the 2x2, see how that works. So here's a 2x2 image I pick. I think I got this one at the architectures kind of seamless texture plugin. So that one's hopefully going to work nicely for me. Scale might be big on this. So let's look at this guy. I'll have to see what's happening with the math here. Hopefully, if it's 16 by 16, we're seeing 8 by 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, we'll see. This one looks a little bigger, so we'll see how this one works on us. So we're going to say apply OK. And again, I'm going to go back to modify, get the paint, pick my 2x2 one. So let me just make sure. Let's make this bigger, make sure I've got the right one. I think it's this one here. Acoustics new, it's that one actually. Gonna paint there. All right, so that did change. Yeah, the grid's the wrong size for that. So let me show you that. So it did change the image here. And then let's go over and to look at it in Enscape because it looks like I said, that scale's gotten a little bit bigger on us. So it's over here. Here's my 2x2 room. So like I said, we lucked out in the 2x4. It looks like the 2x2, we're going to have to tweak the scale of this a little bit. But this is the process you're going to have to go through to get Enscape to render a realistic ceiling. Obviously for my students in class, I'm going to help you with that. All right, so this is, yeah, it's just double the size that we need it. It is, again, interestingly lining up where I want it to. You can see like kind of the corners here, right? So let's go edit that quick together. So we go to modify. Oh, wait, we go manage, we go back to materials, and we got to decrease the scale of that guy. So like I said, it should be, instead of 16 foot by 16 foot, we want 18. So yeah, so you're going to scroll down here, just basically reduce this scale by half. So it's instead of 16 feet, it's 8 feet. That should jump there too. Done. Apply. Okay. And this is similar to when we put in floor tiles too. So now that's looking pretty good. It looks, at least from my Revit rendering, it looks like it's correct. Yep, and there we go. We fixed it. So, like I said, I'm going to just do a quick demo of black ones. I'll pause and kind of just show you what that looks like. But again, happy to help students in class with this, figuring this out. Okay, so this, I've been playing around with a couple of the options for black metal ceilings. This one isn't looking too attractive here in Revit, but what it is it's from the SketchUp Seamless Texture Library, and it's basically a metal 2x2 black acoustic tiles. But they actually are showing up pretty nicely in Revit. So I mean in Enscape. So here's what they look like here. So again, I did have to play with the math a little bit to get the scale correct, but they are lining up with my grid lines that are already there in Revit and where my lighting are. So that's working out nicely. I then also played with basically what's a like a tin ceiling sample. This was a little harder because as you look at the photo, you can see that there's some lighting effects on this. So it's not really a great seamless texture. This also should be slightly bigger, so it actually should be double the size of this, but I just wanted to show folks quick kind of how that's rendering. It's not too bad, but it definitely needs some like fussing with it. So let's get back over to Enscape here. Here's the second one. It'll take a second to come in. It's first going to come in all black and then the picture loads. So, like all our textures in Enscape, this one is very much dependent on how good the photo is that you're using to do this. So there's the black, and then in a second, the texture itself will kind of kick in. So this is one, like I said, finding a decent black one has been kind of challenging for us. Oops, there it is. Okay, so you can see where the lighting is kind of throwing that effect off a little bit. And that's something, again, it's dependent on the texture we're using to create this. But they are working pretty well in terms of getting an actual ceiling texture to render here in Revit. And like I said, that's something I'll help everybody in class, and we'll troubleshoot a little better that way.